All right, welcome to Yin Yoga. Tonight we're going to work on opening the hips and also opening the energy center right at the base, right at the sacral area, right at the back of the pelvis, the sacral chakra, which corresponds to opening the hips. And I'll go more into depth about that sacral chakra as we move along in the practice. Feel free to have any props you like. We might use a strap, so have one close by. And we'll go ahead and get started. So feel free to sit on whatever prop you like. You can sit on a cushion. You can also lie down as we get centered. I invite you to either shut your eyes down all the way or halfway. You can rest your hands on your lap or take one hand to your heart, the other hand to your navel. And especially if you feel ungrounded, I would recommend having your hands on your torso for this. Start to lengthen your spine, stacking your head over your sitting bones. You might drift your head back an inch so it feels a little more open and across the chest. We'll take a slow, deep breath together. Inhale, fill up. And exhale, empty all the air out. We'll continue that breath slow and steady, letting the inhale expand you, breathing under your hands. And as you exhale, notice your body is letting go. Notice what that feels like. We'll take a few more rounds. Inhale, fill up, belly and chest inflate. And exhale, belly and chest relax. We'll take 3 more on your own. One last breath. Inhale, fill up all the way. And exhale, empty out. And if you feel called to set an intention for your practice tonight, you can set it now. It could be anything you wish for yourself, anything that would add to nurturing yourself, something you're cultivating in your life. So that could be patience or connection with your body. Anything that speaks to you, you can let that arise in this moment. And if nothing's coming to mind, I'm going to offer grounding as your intention for tonight's practice. And so we'll bring our hands together at our heart and imagine you could set that word, that intention in between your palms. And then we'll breathe some life together. Let's take a collective breath. Inhale, fill up. Exhale, let it go. And release your hands, open back up your eyes. All right, we're going to stay seated just for a little bit longer. We're going to extend the legs long. You can lean back on your hands and bounce the knees. If you're sitting on something rather bulky, I recommend coming off a bigger prop and sitting either directly on the ground or maybe a small blanket or pillow just for a little bit of height. But we are going to come back to a cross-legged seat. We're going to move into a seated cat-cow. So you'll take your hands in front of your shins or your knees. Then you'll start to round your back, nodding the chin to your chest. We'll exhale here. And as you inhale, pull back on your legs, lift the heart and lift the gaze. Inhale, exhale to round. And inhale to lift. We'll take about 3 more breaths here, letting your heart somewhat lead the way. So the heart lifts, the heart sort of draws in. Now you're welcome to continue this seated cat-cow, or you can take it into a Sufi grind, would be the next progression. So you take your hands as wide as your knees and you'd actually move your whole spine in a circle over your pelvis. So you would lean to one side and then circle your chest forward. Lean to the other side and then round your back. And you kind of let your head be along for the ride. So think of this circular movement we're doing, like the middle of your back is initiating the movement. The head is pretty much staying level. And you can go really deep too if you want to take your hands to the ground and really lean into it and then back. You can try that on. We're stirring some stuff up energy-wise before we settle into the more steady postures. Let's take 2 more here. And then you'll reverse your circle. We'll go about 8 in the other direction. You can exhale around your spine to the back of the circle. Inhale, reach your heart to the front of the circle. We'll take 4 more breaths. Being curious about what is revealing itself as we move along, a lot of internal sensation, maybe pops or clicks occur. Let's take our last one here. And then we'll come up. All right, so we're going to get into a little more of a yin pose. We are going to, from the cross-legged seat, you're going to take your left knee and bend it. And then bend your left knee back behind you on the floor. So your left shin is parallel to the left wall in the room, if you're facing me. And then you'll have choices here. So we're going to have the opposite arm from the back leg. We're going to lower down to the forearm. And you can shift the leg, that back leg, even further back to open the front of the hip. Now, if at any point this irritates your knee, you can always straighten the leg, kind of shake it out, and then regroup. You can also flex the foot on either leg to help stabilize your knee here. So we're going to hang out here for just a moment. We're going to add some chest opening. You're going to reach your top arm. You're going to reach it out in front of you like you're reaching for the wall across the room. You'll kind of round your spine in a cat shape. And then you'll bend your elbow and start to lean back like you're opening your heart up to the ceiling. And so we'll move this way, reaching forward, really stretching, letting your head kind of round down. And then letting your inhale lift you up, tugging your elbow back. So 4 more breaths, just like this, gentle and slow, feeling into your body, what is opening up. And when the mind becomes busy, just know that that's how the brain is built. It's built to think. And so can we refocus our mind to notice the breath? In this case, coordinate the breath with this movement. Inhale and exhale. All right, so now we're going to take both forearms to the ground. And if that doesn't work for you, you could come up onto your palms and twist. So you're twisting away from your back leg. You can stay here and breathe, or you can experiment with taking one or both forearms down, and then just kind of surrendering your head down, letting your upper body take a moment to rest. We're going to be here for a little bit. So you're kind of lining up your torso to the outside of your hip. Now, this is where you might employ a prop because we're going to hang out here. So instead of being on your elbows, I happen to have a really big prop. You could set a bulkier prop or a couple of props under your torso and just kind of hang out and rest. And if you need to be more over your front leg, if that feels less intense, you can lay your belly over your right thigh and just rest. So go ahead and pick the version you want for your body. We never want the toughest sensation. We want something really mellow and gentle. Feels like we're stretching, but we can soften into our breath, into our body. Yeah, and then as you come into your pose, you can readjust your arms any way you like. We want our shoulders relaxed. So we're getting into the sacral chakra tonight. It's an energy center. Many energy centers in your body. The sacral chakra is associated with flow, creative flow, going with the flow, the water element. So as we pause in this pose, I invite you to notice your sacrum, that butterfly bone at the back of your pelvis, that little triangle bone. Imagine you could breathe into the sacrum. As you inhale, you can feel that sacrum expand. And exhale, feel it relax. Continue to breathe there a few more moments. We'll be here for about 10 more breaths. You can also imagine the water part of this. There's a fluid feeling to your sacrum. Be here for a few more moments. Can you allow your shoulders to relax 1 or 2% more than they already are? Can you allow the muscles of your face to soften? We'll take a full breath in. And as you exhale, slide your hands near you. Use your hands to help guide you up to seated. And take your time. We're never in a rush in yin yoga. Think of that as, I guess, an added bonus. We don't have to run to the next side. In fact, take your time to straighten your back leg and then straighten your other leg. And you might lean back on your hands or on your elbows. And we'll just take a moment to pause and check in with ourselves before we go to the other side. So if you feel like one leg or one hip is vastly different in sensation, it's totally normal. And what's also totally normal is when cats are play fighting. So if you hear that in the background, that's what that's about. All right, so we're gonna come back to our cross-legged seat once more. And then if you've used a prop, you can go ahead and move it over to the left side of your mat, just kind of anticipating where we're going. And then we'll pick up our right knee. You'll lift it up and you'll bend it back so that right shin becomes parallel to the edge of your mat. It's going to be totally up to you how much you choose to stretch this hip flexor. So you are going to lean out. And I should also mention you could put a prop under your forearm for this first part too. But the more you travel that back leg back, the more that's going to open in your hip flexor and in your thigh. And so you can do a little or a lot here. And then we'll just take a moment to stretch, kind of lean back and And roll the chest open. You can bend your elbow and just notice your shoulder blades squeezing together on your back. And then you'll reach forward like you're going to reach for something across the room. So you'll slightly round the spine, draw your chin into your chest. So you're the cat pose in the spine. Let your next inhale bend your elbow and sort of drift your gaze up, open your heart. And then exhale, and then go at your pace that feels like the right rhythm for you. If it feels okay to close your eyes, it might give you a better sense of what all sensations are happening in this moment. We'll take 2 more breaths. And then as you feel ready to move to the next thing, you can take both forearms to the floor or to your prop. I actually think coming up on your fingertips, twisting your navel just slightly to your left, and then lowering back down might feel a little clearer in the body. And you can either stay here and just surrender your head. This is more than enough, but if you have a prop, especially if you propped on the first side, you want to be consistent, and so you can take a prop. So you can either stay to the side or angle your torso a bit more forward so you're resting on top of your left thigh. And so we don't need a lot of sensation, we just need enough that it feels interesting. So for most of us, we're going to feel compression in our left hip and knee and thigh, and a twisting in the spine. The important thing is just to let yourself get heavy. We'll be here for about a minute. Check in with your face, the muscles, the back of the jaw. Can you let the back teeth part? Can you let the muscles of the face soften? Can you let the brain soften and the skull? And the big one is the shoulders like to hold on. So feel free to experiment with the shoulders or moving the arms in a way that the shoulders have a little more path of least resistance. We'll be here for about 10 more breaths. You can think of the back of the pelvis, the sacrum, and that watery element, that feeling of going with the flow. What does that feel like in this moment? You know, water can take away that rigidity that we can feel, that dehydration or rigid. How can you soften any of those rough edges you might be feeling inside? All right, we'll press into our hands and slowly pick our body up and come up, and we're going to lie down now. And this is where you're going to use your strap if you have one. If you don't, you're just going to interlace your fingers behind your leg instead. you want something under your head like a pillow, you can do that for a little neck support. I'm going to use a blanket. All right, so we're going to lie down. And we're going to take a moment to feel the earth and not do anything but that. So have your feet planted on the floor, knees are bent. And can you start to become aware of the back of your pelvis in relationship to the ground? You might take your feet a bit wider apart for a little more ability to relax the back. Can you allow the back of your hips to get heavier with each exhale, with each passing moment? Can you feel a little more of that weight, that yielding into gravity? And then we'll separate our feet about as wide as our mat, knees are bent. We'll take a moment to windshield wiper both knees to the right, and then they come back up, and both knees to the left and back up. And you'll just continue to feel that gentle rock, that gentle twist. And then we'll come back to that later, but for now, let's regroup. We're going to take the feet back about hip bone distance apart on the floor. And then you're using a strap. You'll take it around the sole of your foot. I forgot to grab my strap, but I told y'all to grab it though. But you can take that strap around the sole of your foot and then reach it up, and you can bend and straighten. If you don't have a strap, you'll interlace your fingers behind that right thigh, and you'll bend and straighten. And let's just softly leave the leg up. So by no means do you have to all the way straighten your leg. In fact, keeping a little bend in the knees really going to relax your low back right now. So I keep a little bend there at least. Then you can point and flex your foot a few times. And then we're going to keep any amount of a flexed foot. The more you flex your foot, the more you'll feel. The more you straighten the leg, the more you'll feel. So you can decide how much of a stretch you want for this. And then you can either keep your left foot on the floor or crawl it all the way long, elongate your left leg. We're going to hang out here for a little bit. And it's important to keep your foot stacked over your hip socket. If you have a strap in your hands, take that strap right under the ball of your foot, right below the toes, and then pull straight down as if you're plugging your thigh bone deeper into the pelvis. This can be very grounding to the body as well. And then you can think of your breath almost like a wave, like water. And as you inhale, there's the crest of the wave. And as you exhale, the wave recedes back into the ocean. And so on and so on. This constant flow that is your own breath. And kind of moving any stagnation out of the body. We'll take one more breath here. All right, we'll rebend that right knee. Now we're going to carry the leg across our body next. So we're continuing more things on this right leg. You're going to bend your right knee and then reach across with your left arm, grab that bent knee, open the right arm out to the right. And then guide the bent knee all the way across, coming into a spinal twist. You can hook your right toes behind your bottom leg if that helps hold you steady. I'm going to kind of shift my body more on my mat. Now, this is where you can get creative with props, and I would use a prop whenever you have the opportunity, because it just makes things more interesting. You can take a prop and just put it under your knee or your shin, depending on how big it is. So there is a mantra for your sacral chakra, and there's many mantras just with that, but I'm going to offer I am creative. I am creative. And if it speaks to you, you can say that to yourself 3 times as we begin holding this spinal twist. I am creative. We'll be here for about 10 more breaths. So if you start to feel the mind wandering, you can either redirect, noticing the breath again. Notice each inhale, each exhale, or you can say that affirmation to yourself. I am creative. I am creative. Let's take one deep breath together. Inhale, fill up. And exhale, release your twist, your pause on your back, and just take a moment to notice any asymmetry in your body. Noticing the internal experience of your body. Maybe one hip feels dropped and the other one feels lifted, or one part of your body feels heavy, the other part might feel light. And we'll do that all again on the other side. So now it's the left foot, left leg up to the sky. So you can take that strap around the sole of your foot and straighten and bend. You want it around the ball of your foot, just below your toes. Or you can interlace your fingers behind the thigh and bend and straighten, and bend and straighten. And then we'll hold the leg up and partially straight. By no means do we need a completely straight leg here. You're going to point and flex that foot. You know, in yin, you do a little less of what you would normally do, because we're going to hold things for much longer than your average yoga pose. And so whatever stretch you're in initially, it'll start to amplify as we stay in it. Okay, so then you can lightly flex your foot. If you have that strap, make sure the strap is under the ball of the foot, so when you pull down, it feels like you're plugging your thigh bone deep in the socket. And then your other leg can go straight as well, but that is going to add more of a stretch. So it's up to you how deep tonight. And start to notice the upper body. Sometimes the upper body will work very hard to hold your leg here. it actually doesn't have to work that hard. So if your fingers are interlaced, you can actually loosen your grip a little bit. Same thing holding the straps, you can loosen your grip. You can soften your shoulders down to the floor. You can relax your jaw by taking a few swallows. We'll be here for 4 more breaths. All right, we'll lower the leg, and if you would like to use a prop again, you want to gather that and take it off your mat slightly to the right. Or not, you don't need the prop for this. And then you'll bend your left knee into your chest, reach across with your right hand, grab that knee, open your left arm out to the left, and then go for your twist. You'll kind of lift your left hip up in the air. You can hook your toes behind your bottom leg. We'll stay here for a bit of time. I do recommend, if you feel like your chin is jutting up to the ceiling when you're in this spinal twist, you do want to support behind your head with a prop. You want our chin sort of relaxing down. Taking your deep breaths. And then if you want to build upon that affirmation, I create flow in my life. You can say that to yourself 3 times. I create flow in my life. We'll take 4 more breaths here. And then we'll travel back to flat on our back again. Knees can be bent or legs can be long. We'll just check in with ourselves and just notice the total body, the internal experience. What can you notice? What details? So maybe there's a feeling of swirling energy on the inside, Or maybe there's a sense of more evenness between the right and left halves of your body. Whatever you notice will be unique to you. We're each going to feel a different experience, right? Let's take a moment to rebalance the pelvis before we move on. So we're all going to bend the knees and plant the feet. And you walk your heels pretty far up your mat near your glutes. The feet are going to be about hip width apart. And we're going to do the world's tiniest bridge. So you're going to push down into your feet, into your arms. You're going to lift your hips up 1 or 2 inches off the mat, not very much. And then we'll squeeze the glutes. In other words, we're going to squeeze the muscles around the sacrum. And then let all that go. You're going to let your butt go, let your hips get heavy again on the floor. And then we'll do that. Let's do 2 more rounds of that. Push down into your heels, hover the hips 1 inch or 2, and then squeeze your glutes. And then let it all relax as you lower the hips. Last time. Hover the hips, squeeze, and let it go. And then from here you can windshield wiper. We are moving into sleeping swan next, also known as pigeon. If you don't do sleeping swan or pigeon, if you don't do it kneeling, you can stay where you are and take reclined pigeon instead. Cross your right ankle over your left thigh, and then interlace the fingers behind the left thigh. So you would do this, especially if you have any kind of knee stuff going on and we don't want to put pressure on the knees in that way. You'll stay here. Otherwise, you'll join me for the sleeping swan. So we'll transition. So this is the one where we're really going to get into our hips. We've been kind of building up. Because you're kneeling, it might be worth it to grab a blanket and kneel on the blanket. Because especially if you're on a hard surface. Then you might grab a few pillows or bigger prop just in case to rest your torso on later. All right, so we're going to come to hands and knees. And let's just first do a little cat-cow moment. Round your spine, chin to chest. And then inhale, reverse. Lift the eyes, lift the tail. We'll do that 2 more times. And last one. All right, and then we'll come to sliding. We'll have our right knee forward. So right knee behind the right wrist. Slide your right foot all the way across your mat. And so it's not necessary to have your shin parallel to the short edge of your mat. It's going to be more like a diagonal for most of us. And then you'll crawl your back leg way to the back of the mat, as far as it'll go. And then you'll untuck your toes. And then whatever you want here. So you can just be on your forearms. This is quite a good stretch just here. But if you want to, you have the props. I recommend putting a few props stacked under your belly and then folding over. This will help you to soften in the upper body a bit deeper. And then you can have your arms however you like. And we'll take a moment just to settle in. Also, you can prop under your right sitting bone. So if you get into this pose and it feels really intense, I'm using a block, but you can use anything you want, anything about that height, and you can put it under your right sitting bone. And that makes it more sustainable. That's why we use props. So we'll be here for about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2. We've already been here a little bit, so that counts as our time. And imagining as you inhale, your hips can expand a bit broader, your low back can open up a little bit more. And as you exhale, let your bones become heavier to the floor. You can continue that feeling of expansion of your low back as you inhale, heaviness of your bones as you exhale. Bring your mind back to noticing your breath. Inhale, expand. Exhale, release. We have about 10 more breaths here. So in these final moments, I invite you just to notice what sensations you can feel. Where do you feel compression in the joints, in the body? Where do you feel openness? Now, before you come out, I encourage you to have an inward focus and notice how you feel in your body as you're transitioning onto your back. So with minimal effort, you'll come up just enough to move your props out of the way and then roll onto your back. And then pause once you get there and just notice how you feel without any movement of your body. Can you feel the internal shifts happening? Like maybe there's a sense of movement on the inside. Maybe there's a sense of your right leg recirculating or opening up and expanding, maybe rehydrating those tissues. We'll take a deep breath here. Inhale fully. Exhale completely. And then we'll set the feet on the floor, and you can draw the knees into the chest and just take a moment to massage your low back against the floor. So your low back is a part of that sacral chakra as well. It's kind of that whole region. And then we'll roll to one side. Now, if you're doing reclined pigeon, you'll just stay on your back and you'll cross your left ankle over your right knee and then interlace the fingers behind the right thigh. Otherwise, we'll revisit pigeon this time with the left leg forward. So as you come to hands and knees, we'll slide the left knee behind the left wrist. Sweep that foot all the way across our mat. And then start to crawl your back leg long away from you. So as far as you can get it, and then untuck the toes. And then you can start to drift any amount forward. You could stay up on your hands. You could go down to one or both forearms or a prop. And then maybe an additional prop under your left sitting bone if that feels like a good idea. That feels like a comfort, actually. I would go with that. This is a rather deep pose, but we want to find little ways we can use the props to encourage a little more restful version of this pose. Right? We want to soften our body as we stay here for quite a long time. And that being said, if you need to come out early from this pose, you can totally do that. We want to listen to our body. If our nervous system feels triggered after a certain point, you want to come out, lie on your back, and just breathe. Otherwise, we'll be here for a little bit longer. We have about a minute left, or a little bit under a minute, 45 seconds. And we'll take a full breath in. And as you exhale, you can take your hands to the floor alongside you and just push, and keeping that gaze internal as you transition again onto your back. Just notice how you feel once you're back there. Notice the warmth or the blood flow or circulation you feel. Observing that internal landscape. There's a vast world of sensation. We just have to slow down and pay attention. We're going to take a option to, well, you either might have a wall handy, or if you don't have a wall handy, you'll use some sort of prop for a version of legs up the wall. So if if you don't have a wall, this is what you'll do. You'll pick up your feet, plant your feet, and then you'll find any sort of prop. You could use a book, you could use a couple folded blankets, something about 6 inches or so off the floor is usually a pretty good thing to start with, but really any height can work. You'll bridge your hips up and take the prop right under your sacrum. So again, that butterfly bone. And you can stay here. This is supported bridge pose, or you can float your legs up for legs up the wall, or waterfall pose is the name of this one officially. You can readjust the prop however you like. Now, if you feel it cutting into your low back, you want to take that prop lower down your body. If you happen to be right next to a wall and you'd rather do legs up the wall, you do need to come into it a certain way. So you would sit really close to the wall with your outer hip right next to the wall. And then you would lie back and you turn so your butt is right against the wall. And then you would take your, so the heels would be on the wall. We want our heels right over our hips. We don't want to have our butt away from the wall because that can kind of lock out your knees and can make this uncomfortable. So we want to get as close to the wall as we can. So either version, you'll choose what works for you today. And we'll hang out here for a little bit. And for both of these versions, you are meant to soften in your knees. There's a weightlessness and effortlessness. Your feet are relaxed, your ankles, your knees. If you don't feel relaxed, it might mean you need your feet like about hip width apart. That'll help anchor your thigh bones deep into the socket. Okay, so just throwing out ideas here. And we'll be here for a little bit. Let your belly soften, let your chest soften. You can think of that sacrum as watery and creative and flowy. Feel as though gravity is resetting your thigh bones, pushing them deeper and deeper back into the pelvis. And then the pelvis itself can soften and open and widen and relax. We're going to transition out of this pose. However, if you're doing specifically, if you're doing legs up the wall and you love it and you don't want to stop doing it, you can stay here. We have about 5 minutes left of class, so you could spend the last 5 minutes here. Otherwise, we're going to transition out. So if you're doing legs up the wall, sliding your feet down is how you're going to transition. And then rolling over to one side. If you're in the middle of the mat and you have a prop under your hips, you can press your feet into the floor, bridge your hips, remove your prop. We're all going to end up flat on our back on our mat, just as we kind of been doing throughout our practice. If you like, you can gather your knees into your chest and rock across the low back just one final time before we take a moment to rest. You can take whatever prop. If you have a bulkier prop, I recommend it behind your knees. This is especially helpful for the low back. It's also worth it to grab an additional prop for your head, like a pillow or a blanket, especially if you have a tender neck. We'll be here for a few moments, so do settle in and get comfortable. Situate your body any way that would make you 1 or 2% more comfortable. So you can nestle your shoulder blades behind your heart. You could rest your arms out to the sides, palms face up for a more receptive gesture, or for a more grounding quality, you can rest your hands, one on the heart, one on the belly, just how we started. We'll take this time just to let go of any control of our breath. Let the mind just soften, let the body soften. Shavasana. You can start to wiggle your fingers and toes, move around your wrists and ankles, and just start to find ways to re-emerge your body from your rest. You can even take a full body stretch, reaching the arms back and initiating a yawn. Eventually, you'll make your way back up to a seat, just the way we started our practice. As you arrive all the way back full circle, take a moment to acknowledge your intention. So whatever you chose to focus on, to kind of cultivate, notice how that has informed your practice. You can gather your hands together at your heart and bow the thinking mind to the caring heart. May this ancient practice be the reminder that we are already whole. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. All right, thank you so much.